Hello students, welcome to this lecture series especially meant for the PhD students. I mean those have entered into the PhD program. This is your teacher Professor Nirmal Kumar Swain, Department of Library and Information Science, Maharshi Dayanand University, that's MDU, Rohtak, Haryana. So we were discussing about writing a synopsis or synopsis, I mean your research proposal. What are the what should be your content or supposed to be? Structure we have discussed, content also we have discussed, and we were at objectives: introduction, statements of problem, review of related literature, then objectives. Okay, so next heading depends upon, it varies. Next heading you can give your research hypothesis. Research hypothesis sometimes the student, and the next heading would be research design or methodology. Two things I would like to clarify here for the students. As such, there is no, it differs from one proposal to another. Sometimes people keep this higher research hypothesis in research methodology, but rather we would suggest please keep this research hypothesis here immediate after your research objectives or simply objectives. So research hypothesis, as you have studied in your PhD coursework or in master's classes also, hypothesis is nothing but tentative generalization, or what we guess our result is supposed to be. We just think of this could happen, and so that could be your research hypothesis. Hypothesis is a generalized statement or declarative sentence, and hypothesis is always written and if and then clause. If this happens, then it will have effect on its effect will be this. Like I am citing an example, like there is a cloud, it might rain. There is cloud, it might rain. So two elements I am connecting through this hypothesis. Cause and effect, we can say cause and effect. So always hypotheses are written in this way. Or another example I would like to cite here is that exposure to TV reduces IQ. The two things I am connecting here. One is exposure to television, then reduces your IQ. So this could be another hypothesis. Anyway, in your this is not a methodology class, because we are giving the training to the new entrants of PhD students, new entrant of the PhD programs, like how your hypothesis would be. You remember hypothesis is written like this: a generalized statement and declarative statement or sentences, and if and then form, and two elements are cause and effect are connected over here. Okay, and the question is here, like our students is to typically ask, sir, like you have suggested in case of objectives, the sentences would be fragmentary 1, 2, 3 like this, or in bullets. And how would be here your hypothesis? This module is focused on your research hypothesis. Students, hypothesis is written hypothesis, and in plural it is SES, hypothesis. Okay, the tentative guess or tentative generalization. So now coming to the practical point of view, how many hypotheses would be required for a particular PhD? Again, this question they used to ask, but it doesn't have a clear cut answer for that, clear-cut answer. Well, but this much is your hypothesis cannot be like your as many as you have mentioned in your objectives, like 10 or 12 objectives. It cannot be. And you remember, it is all interconnected. What is interconnected? Remember, this is sibling, brothers and sisters, your statement of problem, your research objectives or simply objectives, then hypothesis. You always remember there would be a connection between these three headings. One is a statement of problem, another is objective, another is hypothesis. You remember? So again, if I take back to my previous modules, in statement of problems, you have written the research problems in a paragraphic form, in a paragraph from one sentence after. Normally you used to do that. So probably while reading your statement of problem in context of Indian PhD, but American PhD, they don't write even objective separately the way we write here in India. So in case of so to make it more clear, more lucid, and more simplify the research problem, again we objectify, we broke those sentences of statement of problem into fragmentary sentences, 10 or 12. Again, so you whatever you have mentioned in your objectives, always it has a relation with hypothesis. Your objectives and your hypothesis cannot deviate, cannot deviate each other. There is a strong sense of connection between research objectives and research hypothesis. Obviously, hypothesis, okay, coming to your number of hypotheses, probably the answer cannot be, answer of mine cannot be straight the way you are expecting. It could be largely 2, 3 or 4. Hypothesis is always to be proved or to be disproved. Okay, whatever hypothesis you make, it needs to be proved. What you are thinking of, our probable results would be like this. So this is your hypothesis. Okay, so hypothesis, rather in a very rustic or a very rough term, I would say for my Indian PhD student, whatever objectives you have mentioned, you squeeze those objectives into declarative or if and then hypothetical form. Hypothesis is basis on hypothetical, and hypothetical is if and then form into two or three hypotheses. Okay, so this is clear. Probably when you work on this, if you don't understand, this lecture series may be helpful to some extent, then you discuss with your research supervisor, research guide, or follow a little literature from internet or from any research methodology books. Okay, the first thing. So what I said, hypothesis, you just squeeze your objectives. Suppose there are 10 to 12 objectives, then you squeeze those objectives and transform those objectives into a sentences like an if and then form. So obviously if you squeeze your objectives, 10 to 12 objectives written in fragmentary forms, it will be converted into 2, 3. So 2, 2, 3. So again I am citing, probably this is written in less number of books. There is a direct connection between your research hypothesis, research objectives, and statements of problems. They are siblings rather, siblings. So only written in a different form. If you go to American or any European PhD or research proposal, probably you don't find sometimes your research hypothesis. Sometimes they do write research hypothesis, but they don't mention objectives the way Indian scholars mention in their synopsis. Okay, this is the 3 elements I would like to tell you. So immediate after objectives, you better mention your hypothesis. Okay. Another thing I would like to tell you, which largely our Indian kind of synopsis missing. So that is a research questions. Research question, again typical, American style or in European style. So sometimes the hypothesis is missing, but research questions are there. Only this is a rather in Indian case we don't write research question. research question has two meaning. Research question has two meaning. The broad meaning is research question, but even your hypothesis could be your research question. Even your objectives would be a research question. But in this context, we are discussing research question like is a form of a research question, like form the way you are writing objectives and the way you are writing hypothesis. Similarly, mention a heading research questions. Question means question should be in a question mark form and ended with a question mark so that punctuation mark. Like suppose tracing back to my previous example, if your research topic is on choice-based credit system, then you may write like this: what are the benefits of credit systems? I mean, in the curricula, what are the benefits? Then you put questions mark. So, in which way the credits can be transferred? Then. Another question is like, to what extent we enlarge the electives to the students. So all these questions, I mean, the statements are in question forms ended with question mark, punctuation mark. Okay, so this could be. So now the question is that the students used to ask. Probably you may find it interesting. Can all these four items means statement of problem, objectives, then we have objectives, then we have hypothesis, then research questions go together? It can go together, but in Indian context, research questions is not listed in the synopsis. You can do, but in a typical style of even the Nigerian and other African countries even follow the American pattern, I have seen. So they mention research questions as one of the headings, but they don't mention the hypothesis. Anyway, so you can mention four, but in Indian case, we think hypothesis need to be there. So that which can be proved or which can be disproved. Okay, but in this doesn't qualify to be the style in humanities. Even India also, the people, those who do research in the field of philosophy, religion, theosophy, theology, and literature, so they typically don't mention hypothesis. So they go by research questions. Remember, so don't get confused. You are new, you are fresh, your mind is raw. Don't be confused with necessarily this hypothesis should be there. But in case of social science, they go for data collection and mostly quantitative data. So there is enough space or opportunity to be connected to events or to theme, if and then form. Okay, so probably when reading, so you can get to know. So in this lecture, suppose I come to the summary of, so I discuss basically about hypothesis and what hypothesis is, what is the form of a couple of examples I cited, and what are the siblings or the related concept of in this of hypothesis in this synopsis is statement of problem, then typical Indian style and typically American or even the African style. African style, they mostly follow the American style. Okay, so before next heading would be a research methodology or research design. So with this I complete the hypothesis. Bye bye.